The live-action Cowboy Bebop series has come out. I binged the entire 10-episode first season, but does it live up to one of the greatest anime of all time? Hey Nerdgenic Nation, I'm Aaron Waller, and I was really looking forward to the live-action Cowboy Bebop anime. It looked to take a lot of the greatest parts of the anime and bring them to life, and it did. Kind of. But it also introduced a whole lot of other problems. Now, if you don't already know, Cowboy Bebop is the futuristic misadventures and tragedies of an easygoing bounty hunter, Spike Spiegel, and his partners, Jet Black and Faye Valentine. And now that that's out of the way, let's first talk about the positives of this series. One of my biggest issues I took with the anime was the sense of disconnect that there will always seem to be between Spike, Jet, and Faye. In this series, however, though there is the occasional confrontation between the crew, there's also a camaraderie between them that can break the tension and bring them all together. For example, Jet actually feels like he cares about Spike and vice versa, whereas in the anime they feel like they more tolerate each other. That of course could just be a limitation of 1998 animation, but for the most part I just felt like they actually belonged together and were more of partners in this series rather than just shared a ship. But the series brought about a feel that these characters are more realistic and live within a realistic world despite it being so fantastic and over the top. I also really enjoyed the main cast of John Cho, Mustafa, Shakir, and Daniella Pineda as Spike, Jet, and Faye. I thought they were all fantastic. And there are plenty of liberties that are taken from the anime to the live action show, which I did expect, but the main Bebop crew are really great. Spike feels like Spike, but with some added humor and feeling. Jet has a daughter, which he didn't have in the anime. That feels like it helps ground him a little bit more and give a sense of purpose, though there are some other issues I have with that, which I'll discuss further in a minute. But Faye wasn't really Faye to me. She was kind of a different character with Faye's name and a rough outline of the same backstory. But I thought she was funny at times and worked a bit better in the dynamic of Spike and Jet than she did in the anime. I also like the expansion of the world and characters such as with Anna and Gren. Though they are both characters in the anime, they give a much more involved and interesting story for background characters that Spike's story specifically could lean on when necessary. It gave a base and root to a story that at its core doesn't really have one outside of the Bebop itself. And finally, I like the dedication to try and remain faithful to the anime, though this is arguably more of a gray area because there's more loosely following it than anything else. But if you cut through a lot of the things that they changed, the heart of Cowboy Bebop largely remains the same, as they try to do their best to keep things like the style, music, characters, and more largely the same. And now transitioning from the gray area to the other hand that holds the cons, a lot of these may not be deal breakers for some, but there are a lot more cons than there were pros. The biggest problems this series had for me revolve around Vicious and Julia, both of which were changed drastically to the point of being completely unrecognizable from the anime. And I don't mean physically unrecognizable, as they are actually pretty similar in appearance, but just about everything about them is completely different and in a negative way. Let's first start with Julia. She in no way felt like a strong female character as she did in the anime. She was controlled by Vicious in this series and not in the wind doing her own thing. She was no longer an independent character, but rather a damsel in distress, which is pretty degrading when she could have had all the power. They do try to hand that power to her by the end and set up a storyline for a future if there is a season 2, but I honestly don't even know if I care that much if that happens. And then there's Vicious. They completely removed the viciousness out of Vicious. Rather than being intimidating, he was more of a crybaby whose father was one of the elders of the syndicate and just trying to prove himself. This could have made sense, but in reality it was just a very poor depiction of an otherwise mysterious and brutal character. And of course the way that they try and tie everything back to Spike was also really bad. Trying to make it more of a love triangle between him, Julie, and Vicious was completely unnecessary. I think it was already difficult enough for Spike to leave the syndicate and Julia, but to make it all tied to a weird triangle with Vicious felt very strange and off-putting. Plus, they waste an entire episode on the flashback to show us how it all transpired. The anime was completely able to solve this in quick flashbacks and not even give us the full story. Like, just have that little sense of mystery. It's just kind of nice. And as I mentioned earlier, there's also the addition of Jet's daughter. I felt like this was a massive crutch for his character, and though she was cute and added a little bit of a funny anecdote here and there, for the most part it was just one of those things that came up entirely too often, and they mention in just about every episode. Like, we get it, Jet has a daughter that he loves and will do anything for, but we don't need to keep driving that character trait and point for him other than a handful of times for that point to come across. And the final big issue that I took with the series that I'll mention here was the holograms. It was a cool idea and used properly in some scenarios, but it was also very much foreshadowed things that hurt the story in the long run. Like, I would like to think that in the advanced technologies and worlds that this story takes place in, that someone would be able to tell when someone is actually present and not a hologram, but apparently not. But in regards to the future of the show, I was actually surprised that they even gave us Radical Ed in the very final scene. I thought that they would just stop with mentioning his name in one episode, and just leave it at that and foreshadow it maybe for the future. But having Edge actually show up with Ein at the very end was pretty interesting. I totally didn't expect it whatsoever, but I was still excited to see that they were there and could be returning if it's explored in the future. And this obviously can set up and leave room for a season 2, just as other storylines are still somewhat open, and the Bebop crew is very likely to be reunited, but I'm honestly not sure if they'll keep it going. And I would very much like to see them keep going, but not necessarily so much how it relates to the anime, but rather how the characters develop, evolve, and we get to see more of Spike, Jet, and Faye, but the rest of it I can pretty much live without. And it's because of that difficult back and forth that I have with this series that I'm going to give Cowboy Bebop a 6 out of 10. It's good for background noise, but for the diehard fans of the anime, you'll likely take issue with a lot of what I mentioned here and more. But for those who haven't seen the anime or are very casual viewers of it, this will hit the right notes and may be interesting every so often, but that's about it. So those are my thoughts on the live action Cowboy Bebop Season 1. If you've seen it, did you like it? What did you like? Do you think that there will be a Season 2? And if so, what would you like to see happen in it? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell notifications so you don't miss out on any future videos or live streams like your upcoming Hawkeye live stream featuring yours truly. And for even more awesome content, check out this video over here where we provide evidence as to why Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are in Spider-Man No Way Home. Or for you video game fans, check out Russell's video where he reviews Halo Infinite's multiplayer beta. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. We really do appreciate it, and we hope to see you in the next video.